If you have questions that have been written and that I haven't gotten yet, please feel free to stand up and walk them forward or get them to me, and then I'll get them into the mix here. So with that, let's start off right away. We're going to start alphabetically. We'll start with Josh for first, starting off for 3 minutes, please.
Sure. Well, I'm Josh Brown, County Commissioner. I want to thank Joe and all the members of the Legislative Committee for helping put A's and issues together. It's great to see so many folks this morning. I thank the Chamber, and I thank my opponent for a spirited contest here over the past many months. I know it's been a long campaign for both of us, but that's really what our democracy is about. It's been a significant honor and privilege to represent all of you as County Commissioner the last 4 years. No doubt these have been challenging times for our country and for our community, but I really feel that I've managed the county in a fiscally responsible way. 4 years ago, compared to now, we've trimmed about $14 million from our county's general fund budget. That's about a 15% reduction. So when you talk about the federal government or other levels of government spending a lot more, the county is spending far less. And it's been a major challenge to ensure that with the limited resources the county has, that we're getting the job done for the services that all of you demand as citizens. And the way that I approach the decisions I make as County Commissioner is through a collaborative partnership with our separately elected officials and all of our departments at the county. I really feel Kitsap County is a model for how to get things done right. And we've been able to balance the needs of our community without having to raise new taxes and while living within the 1% property tax cap locally. At the same time, I haven't used the fact that we have limited resources as a county as an excuse not to get things done in our community. And I think that's a major difference between myself and others. I've looked for ways to bring people together to solve problems and move our community forward, whether it's building the new YMCA at Silverdale, whether it's working on the acquisition of the Rolling Hills Golf Course. I've always looked for ways to try to move our community forward and get things done. And I really look forward to the opportunity to serve for another 4 years as County Commissioner. I look forward to all of your questions this morning. And thank you again to the Chamber for hosting this great event.
Well, thank all of you for coming so early in the morning. I too want to thank a lot of people that have helped me out, through this campaign, and my opponent for the work that he's done the last 4 years. I think we've had some disagreements throughout this campaign on various issues. One of those being the budget. While our general fund budget has gone down, our overall budget has gone up, and I think that we really need to start focusing on that budget a little more as we're getting into these economic times where we're seeing things get worse, really. I mean, we're going to have to start looking at what we're going to start receiving from the state or stop receiving from the state. And so I think we need to really start looking at that overall budget and finding out how we're going to structure that budget so that we can be prepared for what's coming in the future. I think that's where you're going to find the major difference between my opponent and I, is that there's been a lot of projects that, while they may have been nice things for our county to have, we have to look at, even if they're capital funds projects, where the rest of the funding is coming from for those capital funds projects, where the strings are coming from that are attached to those projects and how that affects our communities. And so really what I'm going to be focusing on, if you choose to elect me here on November 2nd, is that I want to restructure that budget in such a manner that we can look line by line through each department and see what is a mandated function by the state government for our county to provide. Now there's leeway in those mandates. I'm not going to pretend that just because someone says that they have a mandated service, that means that they get to spend, a ton more money like the law and justice budget. That doesn't necessarily mean that they get all the funding. But what it means is they are a priority in our budget. And I think that the public needs to know that. And I think they need to be able to go in line by line in a structured manner and look to see that their money is being well spent. And when we see that there's projects that are discretionary projects, the answer can't always be, oh, well, that doesn't matter because that was a capital funds project. Because the real answer is that that money doesn't just come out of that capital fund budget. It comes out of all of our pockets, and we really need to start looking at that, and I'm willing to start looking at that. That's going to be my main focus. My other concern is I really believe in accountability and transparency of government. There have been a few things over the course of the last year or two that I've seen that I really believe show a lack of transparency in our government. As I've been watching the budget hearings, I'm not happy with the amount of answers that we're getting for why certain programs are the way they are. I'd like to enforce that more upon the department heads and really get them to start being more clear about what they intend to cut and why, and what effect that will have on the public. And then finally, I would like to really stimulate some economic growth in this county. I think that we are having a problem with the diversity of our job growth in this county. I think we've grown to where we really depend on Keyport and the shipyard and Bangor to provide jobs in our area. And I think it's making it so that we're really not diversifying that employment. We're not working with people that want to come here. When they come here, we're asking them, what are you going to do for us? Instead of telling them what we can do for them. So I look forward to speaking with you later in questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Beth, thank you. And one of the things I will ask that we hold the applause until the very end, and then we'll give a big, round, rousing applause for these courageous people who are running for public office, okay? Thank you for helping me out on that. Otherwise, we'll be here until 9 o'clock, and I want you out the door by 8:30, okay? That's my promise to you. All right, so starting off with questions. And we had Josh lead off, so we'll start with Abby. Abby, can you tell us about your education, including majors and minors, whether you have a 2- or 4-year degree, as well as some related work history before running for county commissioner?
Well, are we standing up between everything?
It's up to you, whatever you're most comfortable with in addressing the crowd. So.
Well, I studied public policy and law at Seattle Pacific University. I have 5 credits of Spanish left. I took 2 years in high school. It's been 15 years since high school. So I do need to finish that 5 credits of Spanish for my major to be complete in public policy and law. And I've been pretty honest about that from the beginning. I didn't intend to run for this office. I was asked to do so by a number of people. And I would have tested out of it, frankly, had I known that I was going to do this. So that's one of those things that I probably will finish before I would even take office. But I do want all of you to know that. I'm trying to think the rest of the parts of the question. I want to make, my relevant work experience. I worked for Senator McCaslin in the 2009 legislative session. And while there, I worked on behalf of small businesses dealing with, state agency intrusion, basically. It's a lot like what we're seeing with the Seabeck Marina, where you have a state department like DNR basically going over, what's really the law and kind of taking charge on an issue that should be a community issue. I also work for the Washington Policy Center, focusing on state and local economic issues.
Thank you. Josh, work history, educational background?
Well, I'm a proud graduate of North Kitsap High School, which doesn't always work well in Central Kitsap, but it's the case. Went to college at UC Berkeley, where I graduated with a bachelor's degree, majoring in interdisciplinary studies, minoring in city and regional planning. And while I was in college, I received my real estate license. Soon after I graduated from college, I received my broker's license, and for a period of about 5 years, I worked as a commercial leasing broker down in the Bay Area. My business partner and I negotiated mostly high-rise office leases. So we represented companies, law firms, tech companies, nonprofits, helping them make business decisions, figuring out where they want to relocate their companies or locate their companies, helping CEOs and managing partners of companies expand their businesses locally. So learned a lot, and that was my primary work experience prior to becoming a commissioner.
Thank you. All right, so staying with you, Josh, and staying within your past experience or current, the question is, have you ever fired anyone for incompetence, and would you?
The answer is yes. I don't feel comfortable naming specifics, but we've had a couple situations where one immediately comes to mind, where we had a director who was hired a couple months into my term as county commissioner, and looking back on it, we probably should have hired somebody differently, but the prior board was frustrated by not having a vacancy in the position. They were frustrated by having a vacancy in the position a long time, and yes, I've been in a position where we've had to not only make changes at the managerial level, but certainly one of the things we're constantly dealing with at the county is, as we're making reductions, dealing with our union contracts, working with those contracts, and the bumping rights that you have in departments like Public Works and DCD and Parks, which provides a lot of managerial challenges for not only our department heads, but the commissioners. So yes.
I have not had to fire anyone. I'm just going to be honest about that, but I have absolutely no problem with looking at a situation and realizing that the person in charge is responsible for everyone under him. And that means that when the job is not getting done, that is who you go to for the response. I mean, it's something that I see in a lot of our departments that I become frustrated with, and I think some of it is a lack of direction that these departments are given, but I really think that we need to start looking at those department heads and expecting them to, when they walk into the budget discussions, have ready what they intend to cut and what they think the effect is going to be on the public. I have no problem doing that if the departments can't perform as expected for the public. Even in areas of customer service, I think we see that, where you're walking into an office like the auditor's office, you may get perfect customer service. In the Department of Community Development, not so much so. That's something that can be resolved very simply, that absolutely needs to be. So that's something I feel comfortable doing.
Thank you. All right, so let's jump right into a hot topic item for this county that's happening right today. For you, starting again with you, Hattie, the question is, the gun club enlarged its size fourfold, filled wetlands, and added night lights without ever getting proper permits. Shouldn't they be held accountable?
Well, the problem that I see with this, and I've looked at it quite a bit, I think that the problem is that when the land swap was made, the county commissioners did not hold the gun club responsible for any of these permits or for any of these updates. I think the gun club has done a great job in a lot of ways, but what I see the problem being is that now the prosecutor has been forced to file a lawsuit at the expense of the taxpayers when these things could have been implemented much earlier. And I've spoke to people on both sides of the issue, and both sides feel that way. And so what's concerning to me is that the prosecutor now is bearing the brunt of what's happening. He's having to sue the gun club in order to get these permits when this should have been enforced at the time of the land swap. The county was aware of these problems then. For them to say that they were not aware of these problems is ridiculous. I mean, they have to have been aware of these problems. So I think that if we handle these problems sooner rather than later, we will not have these clashes of neighbors fighting neighbors because things are just left on the fence. And I think we're seeing that on a lot of issues.
Well, it's blame, blame, blame. First of all, let's set the record straight about the land swap. For over 80 years, the Kitsap Rifle and Revolver Club was leasing that property from the state of Washington. It wasn't the county's responsibility to be big brother to the gun club. My expectation is that any property owner, any developer gets proper permits to do the job. And of course, what's being discussed right now and what eventually will be settled by a judge is whether or not the gun club has expanded their use. The county, in good faith, transferred the property, and the incident that you refer to, that the county owned the club, was literally a matter, the property was literally a matter of hours. If anybody should have had better oversight, it was the state of Washington when they owned the property for 85 years. The county has acted in good faith, and we look forward to the decision that the Superior Court judge is going to make. And my hope is that we're going to be able to come up with a solution that will allow the Rifle and Revolver Club to continue, but continue fully permitted and legal.